All right, this is just going to be a quick, off the top of my head sort of video. I just want to spit out a couple of ideas concerning what we can do to defend Dol Guldur. I think defending Dol Guldur is the single most important objective for us as we approach the end of the season, right? We essentially have three options. We can defend DG, we can divert over to our capital and try to defend that, or we can try to do both at once. Now, ideally, we only have to do DG, right? But I don't think it's ever the correct play to divert everyone over to the capital and try to save that. And the reason is simple. We can barely hang on and win these extended fights as it is. If Rohan and Lyndon get the ring and have all of the bonuses and benefits that come with that, there's no way we're going to be able to stand up to them. At least if we hold the ring, right, there is a chance, however slim it is, that even if they retake our capital, we can come over and reclaim it towards the end of the season, right? If we lose the capital with 2 days left in the season, we can come back from Hills of Rune or wherever, Nirn, Sea of Nirn, if we have to, and try to retake it. But if we come over to save the capital and lose the ring, or even just fight here and then lose the ring, there's no coming back from that. There's no chance that we take the ring back again, unless something crazy happens and all the factions start fighting each other for desperate control of the ring. But I really do not see that happening. Everyone seems pretty much okay with an outcome that just involves Variags losing. They don't really seem to care who wins after that. You know, Lothlorien, Erebor, even Angmar and Isengard now, they seem content to fight against us rather than for someone else, even themselves. So we just kind of have to accept that for what it is. So with that in mind, I think we need the best possible strategy for defending DG, and I do have some ideas in that respect. So DG is not structured like anything else on the map, really, right? You can compare it to a really defendable capital like Erebor, but compared to defending the keeps as we have been for the past week at the Undeeps or the Brownlands or even Kara's Galhedron, right? It's not even close to the same because you have this outer ring that prevents access to all but 3 points. Okay, they have to enter either through the south, through the east, or through the north. They don't have any other option. They must come in through there. And even after they break through that point, they have a lot of work to do because there are tons of forts on the inside. There's this whole line of forts that goes along the west, northwest, and southwest edge that is otherwise completely untouchable. You have to break into one of these access points to get to this side and clear these forts out, right? You must. There's no other way. So they're going to encounter a lot of resistance even after breaking through one of these barriers, and that's key because, with Undeeps or any of the other forts in the open world, they just find the weakest point somewhere in the fort formation, somewhere where someone hasn't built a fort, somewhere where there's a level 1 fort with no armies guarding it, whatever. And they just break through 4 tiles and they're there at the keep. And usually from there, they either siege or they just slowly expand out from there. And essentially the battle's lost unless we retaliate. But that's not the case with DG. We're able to employ more strategy. We're able to coordinate, and I think we really have an opportunity to show that we can outmaneuver them, out-strategize them. I really think we do. So the key thing is going to be stamina. We have to play around stamina. So it doesn't matter how strong your commanders are, or even how close your fortress is, right, to DG itself. You are limited by stamina. If you have no commanders left with stamina, you can't fight. If you have no commanders stationed at your forts left with stamina, you cannot fight. You have to take that time to retreat those commanders and then send out new ones, and that's where we have the advantage, or at least where we can have the advantage. So there's a couple things that every single player in Gundabad and Variags need to do right now. One, if you do not have a maxed out fort in DG, you need to make one now. We do not have any more time to wait to do that. If you don't have a tile in DG, betray someone who has more than one. Because I promise you, like, more than one person having, one person having more than one tile along this western edge is not going to do anything for anyone. So, like, I don't mean to call anybody out here. It's just an obvious example because they're in progress. They're all right here in a line. But Ayudin, he has 3 tiles right in a row right here, all building forts. He doesn't need 15, or is it 18, army slots, okay? He can take one fully upgraded tile, one fully upgraded fort, use those either 5 or 6 slots, use the fort from DG itself, from the enter mechanic, and use your warband fortress, which again, everyone should have a warband fortress somewhere nearby. That should be enough for both your fighting commanders and a couple pathing commanders. You have to have both. Okay? And the key strategy that I'm thinking of here, the main strategy, would be to just fill all of the inside with max level forts, right? Guarantee that they're going to have to spend the maximum amount of stamina to burn through this. On the outside of the fort, you know, do something similar. Have a fort wall, but this is where it gets a little more complicated. You would have a sort of like weaker defense on the outside of the fort ring, right? So if the fort ring extended out past these 200 lands where my mouse is going and kind of made a circle or a square here, then you would have a sort of weak defense line, going across this fort, covering each tile, and then a line of empty forts, and then inside the entrance, by the entrance right here, probably on this just 200 tile land, right, we would have a huge stack of armies. Now, Rohan would, or whoever, would fight through this initial line, right? And you could guard, you could move commanders in here to block their progress, to catch their armies out, whatever. They would burn through this initial fort line, make it through here, encounter fierce resistance at this 200 tile positioned inside, right? And then, after they've done that, after they've fought, we push them back out, and we reset. We do the exact same thing. We station armies across the outside perimeter, and we rebuild all the forts inside this inner sort of diamond shape. All of these forts have to be rebuilt, because forts are going to be how we drain their stamina. Now, that means one very important thing. If you are using a tiling army to take a tile from Rohan when they are invading DG, you are making a commitment to rebuild that fort. It must be done. You cannot have a hole in these defenses. You cannot. Because before you reach this choke point, right, it is just like defending a keep in the open world, except the keep is the choke point, right? They just break through the 4 weakest tiles here. They advance up to the keep, and they take it. Very similar concept. They advance up to the weak point, or using a weak point, up to the choke point. We defend that like crazy, rather than a keep, and then we push them back out, establish a new defense line, and rebuild the forts inside. Now, what that means is we are basically intentionally letting them burn through the forts that are in this inner circle, right? We want them to burn through it because that is what is going to eat up their stamina, right? Think about what you see in the Rohan siege armies. They really are not that different from their regular armies. They don't really have siege commanders. They don't really have siege units other than like the guardians, the dwarf guardians. And they don't like using them in offensive assaults because they're slow and they can just use horses instead. And the horses have good enough siege that they can burn through forts in wartime without too much of an issue, right? So it doesn't really matter. It isn't like an evil situation, right? They're not going to have dedicated siege armies, dedicated siege commanders. They're going to be using their Eowens, their Gandalfs, their Theodens to take down these keeps. And when they do that, these forts rather, and when they do that, they can't use them up here on this big tile to break through into the inside. So, we want a stalemate, essentially. We want to hold our ground here. And then obviously, like, as your forts got worn down, or as your armies got worn down at the 200, 300 tiles here on the inside, you would recall them back to your big fort inside DG, reinforce them as necessary, and then send them back out over here. Just 20 stamina at a time. And that would be how your fighting armies would stay in good shape and stay topped up with stamina, right? So, and then with your fast armies, with your tile taking armies, yes, you can recall those if you need to, but then we still have big fighting armies to maintain the line. I'm pretty sure every entrance into DG has pretty close to the same setup. So this one is a little bit weaker. The east side is a bit weaker. I think this would probably be the best tile to hold them on because it's a great choke point here. It's just very vulnerable from all sides. But the key is to have one big tile, right, that you can just stack on and stay there. Now, it looks like the north entrance kind of sucks. This whole thing is single tiles all the way out to here. And by that point, you're branching in from the east. But I don't think we really have to worry about that. I really don't think we're going to see much of a showing from the dwarves in the northeast. They've pushed out very minimally. They're in the edge of like central Mirkwood, but they really have not done a whole lot. They really have not been very active compared to Rohan. So this is actually ideal because we have our weakest enemy in the dwarves. Oops. Fighting from our weakest angle, which is the north side. So leverage this strong south defensive point. If they rotate around, right, if Lyndon comes up from the right, if Rohan tries an alternative strategy and tries to come up to the right, then we can shift over here too. And, defend on this tile. But the key is going to be having 2 layers of defense. We want to have one heavy layer of defense inside, and then we reinforce that defense, or a second layer of defense on the outside, and then just a bunch of empty forts in between to burn stamina. Just remember, the key is that once these forts get burned, you have to rebuild them. It's fine that they get destroyed, right? That's the goal. You want them to waste stamina killing your forts instead of killing your armies. And with that note, don't be afraid to build forts on the side either. Like, these are not the most relevant tiles in the world, right? They're not all that close to the entrance. There's really no reason that we would need to use them, right? But I guarantee you, if you build a fort here, Rohan will spend the stamina to come and burn it. You can see the same thing at the Undeep's Keep and all the other keeps that we've been defending recently. Let me just throw a random tile out here. Is this tile important right now to them? No. But I promise you, If Melker's Bane was to just spontaneously start building a fort here, they would immediately dispatch one of their armies that is already on the field to come and destroy it. And just like that, with the whopping expenditure of like 10,000 stone and 12,000 gold, you've burned 40 stamina from an army, right? And it's very easy to do this strategically. It's very easy to bait them into using stamina. You just have to click on the tile and click build. Like I'm not trying to oversimplify things here, but that really is all there is to it. Now, as far as dividing up DG, we need to remember that we still cannot defend other warbands, right? So while we can collectively stack on, I believe no, we can't even collectively stack on the southern engines. Never mind. So what we should really do is have the strongest warband, whoever that is, on this tile, right? Put the second strongest warband on this tile and just say, these are your main priorities, right? Now, I'm not saying that the different warbands shouldn't send to these tiles, right, to assist with defending, but like we need to assign ownership in order to defend effectively. So like right now, we have Raid owning this 300 power tile. This fort owned by Bilbo's Wagons, like it's here, yes, that's great, but it's a weak point. Why? Because we can't defend it. So we need to fix these sort of gaps in our defense. Having a tile inside DG is important, but we need to make strategic use of the space that is by the choke points. So this fort needs to go. It needs to be replaced by literally anybody in Raid that is willing to just commit to building and maxing out a fort. That fort must be maxed. Okay, so again, just to recap, every single member should build a fort within DG and max it out within the next day or two. A max level fort. They should also send armies out to just like an outer circle around each entrance. And again, just build forts. You don't have to max these out, right? With the ring bonuses that everybody should have, the fortress health bonus, your level 1 forts are honestly pretty efficient at blocking them off. They have a lot of HP. If you want to upgrade them to like level 2, maybe even level 3, just to make them harder to take out, go ahead, be my guest. But at least, like, we have to have fort walls. There is not a single commander on the good side that is capable of one-shotting a fort. That is not something they can do. That's a privilege exclusively for basically Gothmog and nobody else. So every single fort that you make is guaranteed to eat up at least 40 stamina. Real quick, in case I didn't make this clear earlier. So when I was talking about recreating this outer defensive layer, outer defensive ring, the key is to maintain this line while the forts in this area are rebuilding, right? Because while they're rebuilding, they don't really have any defensive value. So all of the forces that are guarding the 300 tile inside would shift outside and defend the outer layer purposefully while after they've expended stamina getting through, right? Like the idea is let them tire themselves out on burning through the forts and then attacking this one tile. Then when they've expended their forces and used up their stamina, we push back out, we establish a new defensive ring with these armies that are here, and we take 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever, to rebuild all of the forts inside and then move those armies back to this tile again. Will it take coordination? Absolutely. But this is really the only plausible way that I can think of that we can hold them off, because we're against superior numbers. We're being surrounded by almost all sides. You can guarantee that the elves are going to try to come from the northeast, or northwest rather. I'm sure the dwarves will make some sort of showing from the northeast, and then we have Lyndon from likely the south, but potentially the east, and Rohan from the south. But I think with the proper preparation, with good communication during the event, and just some determination and willingness to put through just a little bit more shit to get us there, I think we can pull this off. So please, like, definitely open to discussion. Please hit me up on Discord, talk to your warband leaders. Let's figure out a plan that will let us end the season with the ring.